My name is Jolene, and I'm 34 years old. She came to me trembling, with bruises on her arms, saying her ex was dangerous and she had nowhere else to go. I believed every word. I gave her food, a bed, and my trust. But a week later, when the truth surfaced, I realized the man she called a monster wasn't hunting her at all. He was hiding from her. And the day I found out why was the day I learned what real danger looks like. I've spent the last decade trying to build a simple, predictable life in the small coastal town of Dunewood. I work as a paramedic, which means my days are often full of emergencies, but my nights, those are mine. I live alone in a modest apartment above a bakery where the smell of fresh bread wakes me at sunrise. It's quiet, peaceful, almost dull. And after my messy divorce 3 years ago, that's exactly how I like it. The night everything changed started like any other late shift. Rain poured in relentless sheets, the kind that turns the streets into rivers and the air into fog. I was just finishing paperwork when I saw her, a woman sitting on the steps outside the ambulance bay, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her arms wrapped tight around herself. She looked terrified. I remember running over, calling out, "Hey, are you okay?" She flinched at my voice, her wide eyes darting toward the parking lot before finally landing on me. "My name's Mara," she said, her voice trembling. I just need somewhere safe for a little while." There was something raw in her tone, something that made me stop thinking about policies or procedures. She had a bruise on her collarbone, a fresh one, and a split lip. I asked if she wanted me to call the police or take her to the ER, but she shook her head so violently it startled me. "No police," she whispered. "He'll find me if I go there." That's when she told me about Caleb, her ex-boyfriend. She said he was possessive, controlling, violent, that she'd finally escaped, but he had people watching her, tracking her every move. Her words came out between sobs, desperate and trembling, and before I could stop myself, I said what I shouldn't have. "You can stay with me tonight, just until you figure something out." Even as the words left my mouth, part of me knew it was reckless. I didn't know this woman, but compassion is a dangerous reflex. It kicks in before logic has a chance to argue. When we got to my apartment, Mara thanked me over and over. I handed her a towel and one of my old sweatshirts. She seemed fragile, like she could shatter if I said the wrong thing. I tried to make her tea, but she refused it. She said caffeine made her heart race, that it reminded her of him. I didn't ask why. That first night, she barely spoke. She sat on the couch, staring out the window like she was waiting for someone to appear in the darkness. Every creak from the hallway made her flinch. At one point, I saw her glance at hers phone and quickly turn it face down. "Is that him?" I asked quietly. Her hand froze over the screen. "No, just junk messages." Something about her tone made me drop the subject. Over the next few days, Mara began to open up a little. She helped around the apartment, cleaned the kitchen, even cooked breakfast one morning, eggs, toast, and burnt coffee. She said cooking helped her calm down. I wanted to believe that. But it wasn't long before I started noticing cracks in her story. The first time she mentioned Caleb, she said he worked construction. The next time, she said he owned a car dealership. She couldn't seem to remember what city they lived in. She told me she didn't have family, but later mentioned a sister she hadn't spoken to in years. Every inconsistency made my stomach tighten, but then she'd look at me with those haunted eyes, and I'd remind myself that trauma does strange things to memory. One afternoon, I brought home groceries and found her rearranging the pictures on my bookshelf. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled nervously and said, "Just keeping busy." But I noticed she'd turned one of the frames face down, the one with my ex-husband, Matthew, at our wedding. That night, I told my coworker Lydia about Mara over coffee. Lydia frowned. "You took her home? Jolene, that's risky. You don't know who she really is." "I couldn't just leave her out there," I said defensively. She looked terrified. "Yeah, well, terrified people can still lie," Lydia replied. "Just be careful, okay?" I promised I would, but even then I could feel myself getting pulled deeper into Mara's orbit. There was something magnetic about her vulnerability, something that made me want to protect her, even as doubt whispered that I shouldn't. By the fifth night, the rain had finally stopped. The air outside was still heavy, thick with the smell of wet pavement. I went to bed early, exhausted from a 12-hour shift. Mara said she was going to read for a bit in the living room. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of a voice, soft, urgent, coming from down the hall. At first, I thought she was talking in her sleep, but then I realized it wasn't just murmuring. It was a whisper, steady and deliberate. I slipped out of bed, careful not to make the floorboards creak. The light from the living room spilled faintly into the hallway. As I got closer, I could hear her clearer. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "No, he doesn't suspect anything yet," she said. A pause. Then, "I told you, he trusts me already." My heart froze. I stopped breathing, every instinct screaming to back away before she noticed me. But I couldn't move. Who was she talking about? Who trusted her? I peeked around the corner just long enough to see her standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, the streetlight catching her face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was calm, focused. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Mara didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like someone who was exactly where she wanted to be. The more she talked, the less I believed her. When someone tells you their ex is a monster, you don't expect them to sound rehearsed. After hearing Mara whisper those words, "He trusts me already," I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the scene in my head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she was talking to a counselor. Maybe she was sleep talking. Maybe I was imagining the entire thing because of exhaustion. By morning, I'd convinced myself to ask her about it. She was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee she must have brewed hours ago. The moment I mentioned the phone call, she froze. "Oh, that," she said, smiling weakly. "It was a hotline. I couldn't sleep, so I called a survivor support line. I didn't mean to wake you." Her tone was calm, too calm. Still, the guilt hit me. I felt like a horrible person for doubting her. "I'm sorry," I said. "I shouldn't have eavesdropped. I just got worried." She reached across the table and touched my hand lightly. "You've done more for me than anyone. I'd never lie to you, Jolene." I wanted to believe her. I really did. Over the next few days, things seemed normal. Mara started settling into a routine, making breakfast before I left for work, tidying up, leaving soft music playing when I came home. She seemed grateful to have somewhere safe. Sometimes she'd even laugh, and it almost made me forget the tension from before. But the more she relaxed, the more she let things slip. Her stories about Caleb started to change. At first, he was an auto mechanic with a temper. Then suddenly, he owned a construction business. One day, she said he'd broken her phone during an argument. Another time, she said he'd used it to track her. When I gently pointed out the differences, she'd get defensive. "You don't understand trauma," she snapped once, eyes flashing. "Things blur together when you've been through what I've been through." I apologized again. It was becoming a pattern. Me apologizing, her deflecting, and something in my gut tightening each time. Mara started using her phone more, always turning away when I walked in. Once, I caught her texting furiously, her thumbs moving fast. I joked, "You're glued to that thing? Texting your sister?" She hesitated. "Yeah, my sister." But later that night, I heard her whisper into the phone again, and this time I caught a single word. Caleb. The air left my lungs. I froze outside the living room door, my heart pounding. I didn't catch the rest of the conversation, but I knew what I'd heard. Caleb. The same man she claimed she was terrified of. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She made pancakes and asked how my shift went. I couldn't even look her in the eye. "Work," I told Lydia what I'd heard. She frowned, leaning back in her chair. "You need to stop giving this woman the benefit of the doubt. If she's lying about him, there's a reason, and I can find out." Lydia was resourceful. Nosy, sure, but good at finding things. She ran Caleb's name through public records, police reports, anything she could dig up. A few hours later, she called me from the break room. "Jolene," she said, "there's no record of a Caleb matching her description anywhere near here. No restraining orders, no arrests, nothing." My stomach dropped. That night, Mara was unusually cheerful. She'd cooked dinner, pasta, candles, music. It felt like she was trying too hard to reset whatever had shifted between us. "You're quiet," she said, smiling at me over the table. "Just tired," I lied. She studied me for a moment, her eyes flickering like she could sense the doubt creeping in. Then she laughed softly. You think I'm crazy, don't you? I didn't say that, but you thought it. Her voice hardened. Everyone always does. Before I could respond, she got up and went to her room, slamming the door. After that, something in me broke. The compassion that had once drowned out my instincts started drying up. I needed to know who she really was. So, the next afternoon, when Mara was in the shower, I went into the guest room. I told myself it was for my own safety, that I just needed to make sure she wasn't dangerous. But deep down, I already knew what I was doing was wrong. Her duffel bag was half unzipped at the foot of the bed. Inside were a few shirts, a charger, some makeup, and a folded wallet. I hesitated, then pulled it open. Her driver's license was inside. The photo was hers, but the name wasn't Mara. It said Laura Benson. The address was from another state. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I flipped through the rest of the wallet, receipts, cash, a few cards, but what caught my eye was a folded photograph tucked behind a credit card. When I unfolded it, my breath caught. It was Mara, smiling, her arms around a man who had to be Caleb, but he didn't look like the monster she'd described. He looked kind, relaxed, and between them was a little boy with bright eyes, maybe 4 years old, holding a toy car. Written on the back in neat, slanted handwriting, Eli's first day of preschool. I stared at it, my hands trembling. Nothing made sense anymore. If Caleb was so violent, why did Mara keep a picture of him, of them, like a family? And who was Eli? Her son? Caleb's? Before I could process any of it, I heard the shower stop. I shoved the photo and ID back into the bag and stepped out of the room, trying to steady my breathing. I poured myself a glass of water, pretending everything was normal as I heard her moving around. When Mara came out, she was smiling again, hair damp, wrapped in a towel. "You okay?" she asked casually. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on me for a beat too long, like she could see right through me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The image of the photo burned into my mind. If she'd lied about her name, about Caleb, about everything, then who exactly had I let into my home? The picture that changed everything. She said she was running from a monster, but in the picture, she looked like she loved him. All day at work, the photo burned in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smiling beside that man. The same man she'd described as violent, unstable, obsessed. There was no fear in that image, only warmth, love, even. When I got home that night, Mara was sitting at the table eating leftover pasta, acting like nothing had happened. She smiled at me, that sweet, slightly fragile smile she always used when she sensed tension. I sat down across from her and tried to keep my voice steady. "Mara," I said, "I need to ask you something." She looked up, fork midair. "What's wrong?" I slid the photo across the table. "Who's this?" The color drained from her face instantly. "Where did you get that?" "I found it in your bag," I admitted. "You told me Caleb was your ex. But in this picture, you're holding him, and a child. You don't look afraid. You look happy." She blinked rapidly, and then tears filled her eyes. "That's not what it looks like," she whispered. "He's not my ex. He's my brother." Her brother. I almost laughed out loud. "Mara, you told me he was your boyfriend," I said quietly. "You said you escaped him." She shook her head so fast I thought she might hurt herself. I was confused. When I'm scared, I mix things up. It's trauma fog." That phrase again. Trauma fog. It sounded rehearsed, like something she'd practiced saying. I stared at her for a long moment, torn between anger and pity. "If you're lying to me, you need to tell me the truth. Right now." "I'm not lying," she said, crying harder. "You don't understand how he twists things. He makes people think I'm the crazy one. Please, Jolene, you have to believe me. You're all I have." And just like that, my resolve cracked. Maybe she really was unstable. Maybe she didn't even know what was true anymore. I told her it was okay, that she needed to rest. She nodded weakly, wiping her eyes, then retreated to the guest room. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the apartment felt heavier. The air, the silence, everything. I started locking my bedroom door. It made me feel ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the unease coiling in my stomach. A few nights later, I noticed something strange. A car, a dark sedan, started appearing across the street. Parked directly opposite my window, engine off, lights out. The first night I brushed it off. The second night it came again. The third night it was still there at 2 a.m. Mara saw it first. She froze at the window, her face going pale. "It's him," she whispered. "He found me." I grabbed my phone. "We're calling the police." She grabbed my wrist. "No, he'll disappear before they get here." But I did it anyway. When the patrol car arrived, the dark sedan was gone. No license plate, no trace. After the officers left, Mara collapsed on the couch, sobbing. "I told you, I'll never be safe anywhere." I sat beside her, unsure what to say. For the first time, I saw something real in her fear. Not manipulation, not calculation, but raw panic. Maybe she wasn't lying after all. Maybe Caleb really was watching. My sympathy crept back in, soft and unwelcome. I made her tea, rubbed her back, told her she could stay as long as she needed. She clung to me like a frightened child. Later, after she went to bed, I cleaned up the cups. That's when I saw her phone light up on the table. Screen face up this time. The message flashed for just a second before the display dimmed, but I saw enough to make my blood run cold. New message from C. I stood frozen, staring at it. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. I already knew what the C stood for. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch. The wind, the creak of pipes, the distant hum of traffic. My thoughts raced in circles. Who was she really talking to? If Caleb was her brother, why was she still in contact with him? And if he wasn't, if he was really her ex, then what did she want from me? Just after 1 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sound sliced through the silence like a blade. An unknown number, no contact name. I hesitated, then opened it. "Please don't believe her. She took my son." That was all it said. 10 words that turned everything upside down. I sat there, staring at the message, my hands shaking. She took my son, Eli, the boy in the photo, the one between them, smiling, holding that tiny toy car. I didn't know who to believe anymore. The woman crying in my guest room, or the man she claimed was hunting her. But one thing was certain. Someone was lying, and I was stuck right in the middle of their truth. The message from the monster. The text came from the man she said wanted to kill her, and he sounded terrified. I stared at the message on my screen long after it arrived. Please don't believe her. She took my son. For a while I couldn't move. My mind spun in circles trying to make sense of it. How did he even have my number? I'd never contacted anyone connected to Mara, unless she'd given it to him. But why would she do that? My thumb hovered over the screen before I finally typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "My name is Caleb. You're letting her stay with you, aren't you? Please, I just want Eli back." My pulse hammered. It was him, the man from the photo, the so-called monster. I wanted to throw the phone across the room to pretend this wasn't happening, but curiosity, morbid, desperate curiosity, kept me reading. He sent another message, then another, each one cutting deeper. "She's not who she says she is. She kidnapped our son 2 weeks ago. I have proof." A moment later, an image popped up. It was a photo of a small boy, Eli, sitting on a swing, grinning at the camera. The same boy from the picture I'd found in Mara's bag. Then another photo came through, this time of court documents. My hands trembled as I zoomed in. Custody order, Caleb Monroe, full parental rights, restraining order, defendant, Mara Langford, restraining order, against her. I felt my stomach twist. Everything she'd told me, how she'd fled an abuser, how she was in danger, it all flipped upside down in an instant. But I wasn't ready to believe him either. Not yet. I typed, "If this is true, why should I trust you? She says you're dangerous." A pause, then his reply. "If I were dangerous, she wouldn't have been able to take him from me. Please, I'm begging you, just talk to me. Let me explain." I hesitated for a long time before calling. His voice when he answered wasn't angry or threatening. It was exhausted, shaky. "Is she there?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "She's out for a walk." He let out a long breath, like he'd been holding it for days. "Thank God. I've been trying to find her for weeks. My son, he's all I have left." He sounded nothing like the monster Mara had described. No rage, no venom, just heartbreak. He told me Mara had once been his fiancé, that after their son, Eli, was born, she started showing signs of paranoia, accusing him of watching her, plotting against her, conspiring with strangers. She wouldn't take her medication, he said softly. She thought everyone was lying. Then one day, she packed Eli's things and disappeared. I didn't know what to say. It was too much, too fast, too contradictory to everything I'd believed. Why contact me? I asked finally. Because you're her new lifeline, he said. She always finds someone kind to hide behind, someone who believes her stories. That line made my stomach churn, because he was right. I did believe her. I believed every trembling word, every fabricated detail. I'm not asking you to betray her, Caleb continued. Just, please, make sure Eli's safe. If she has him with her, don't let her run again. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. When Mara came back later, I tried to act normal. She was in a bright mood, humming softly as she unpacked groceries. She even bought me flowers, daisies, my favorite. You didn't have to do that, I said carefully. I wanted to, she smiled. You've been so good to me. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her sweetness suddenly felt suffocating, rehearsed. Every word seemed calculated to keep me in her corner. The next morning, I confided in Lydia. I showed her the messages, the documents, everything. Lydia's face tightened. You need to go to the police, now. This isn't your problem, Jolene. I just want proof first, I said. Something solid. She sighed. Proof? Jolene, you already have proof. You just don't want to admit it. But she was wrong. I needed to be sure. Because if Mara really was mentally unstable, I couldn't risk triggering her. I'd seen what paranoia could do to a person. That night, after Mara went to shower, I went into her room again. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. Her bag sat open near the dresser, clothes spilling out. I carefully pushed a few aside and saw something wedged beneath her sweater. A small blue backpack. It looked like a child's bag, the kind a little boy might take to preschool. I slowly unzipped it. Inside was a small toy car, scuffed and chipped from play. A folded drawing in crayon, 2 stick figures holding hands beside a smaller one. Above it, written in block letters, me, Mommy, Eli. My throat tightened. I reached deeper and found another photograph, Mara and Eli on a park bench, both smiling. On the back, written in neat pen strokes, were 2 words, Eli's things. I stared at it for a long time, unable to breathe. She had him. She actually had him. Every kindness she'd shown me, every tear, every whispered story, it all made sense now. She wasn't running from danger. She was hiding someone. I heard the shower stop. Panic jolted through me. I quickly zipped the backpack shut, shoved it back where it was, and hurried out of the room. By the time Mara stepped into the hallway wrapped in a towel, I was sitting calmly on the couch, pretending to scroll my phone. She smiled at me. You look pale. Everything okay? Just tired, I said. She studied me for a moment, that same eerie stillness in her eyes. Then she nodded and went to her room, humming softly. The moment her door closed, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. Somewhere behind that door was a woman who'd convinced the world she was a victim, and I was finally beginning to see who she really was. The things she was hiding. Every lie she told started to unravel the moment I touched that little toy car. After what I found in her room, it became impossible to see Mara the same way. Every look, every word, every tremble in her voice. I began to wonder what was real and what was performance. I told myself I needed to stay calm, keep her talking, and figure out just how deep her lies went. The next morning, I waited until she sat down with her coffee before I said it. Mara, we need to talk. She glanced up mid-sip. About what? The truth, I said quietly. Her smile froze. What do you mean? I didn't want to play games anymore. I found something in your bag. A toy car. A picture of you and a little boy, Eli. The cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. You went through my things? She whispered. I had to. You've been lying to me since the day you showed up here. Tears filled her eyes instantly. No, you don't understand. Caleb brainwashed my son. He tells everyone I'm crazy, but I'm not. I folded my arms. Then why do you have his backpack, Mara? Why do you have his things? She looked wild now, pacing the kitchen barefoot. "Because he's mine," she cried. "He's my son. Caleb took him from me. I had to get him back." Her words hit me like a punch. "You mean you took him?" She stopped pacing. "I rescued him." For a moment, I could see two versions of the truth fighting behind her eyes. One where she was a mother protecting her child, and another where she was a woman stealing someone else's. "I'm not the villain here," she said, voice breaking. "Caleb has everyone fooled. He's manipulative. He knows how to sound calm, reasonable, but he's poison underneath. He's doing it to you too." I wanted to say she was wrong, that I'd heard the truth from Caleb himself, but I bit my tongue. She was unraveling right in front of me, and I didn't want to make her explode. "Mara," I said softly, "where is Eli now?" Her eyes darted toward the window. "He's safe." "Safe where?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You'll tell him. I can't let that happen." "Mara, please," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but she was already backing toward the hallway, breathing fast. "I thought you cared about me," she whispered. "You said you believed me." "I do care," I said. "That's why I need you to tell me the truth." But it was too late. Something in her broke. "You don't get it," she screamed. "They'll twist it again. They'll say I'm sick. They'll take him away forever." And then she was gone, bolting down the hall, slamming the guest room door. I heard drawers yanking open, the frantic rustle of clothes. I grabbed my phone and called 911. When the dispatcher answered, my voice trembled. "There's a woman in my apartment. She's not violent right now, but she's unstable. She might be involved in a child abduction." They promised to send an officer. I stood by the front door, listening. Inside her room, the noises stopped. Then came the sound of a zipper, the click of the window latch. "Mara!" I yelled, racing down the hall. By the time I burst into the room, she was halfway out the window, her bag slung over her shoulder. "Don't do this!" I shouted. "Please!" She turned, her face streaked with tears. "You don't understand. He'll twist you too." And then she was gone, out the window, down the fire escape, vanishing into the alley. By the time the police arrived, she was nowhere to be found. I gave them everything, the fake ID, the backpack, the photo, the text from Caleb. They took notes, asked questions, promised to put out a bulletin. But when they left, I felt worse, not better. The apartment felt emptier than ever, like she'd taken the air with her. The silence pressed in from all sides. I sat on the couch, staring at the toy car I'd pulled from her bag. It was small, blue, with one wheel missing. I turned it over in my palm, wondering if Eli was out there somewhere clutching another toy, just like it, missing his mother, or maybe terrified of her. The line between those two possibilities was thin enough to cut skin. That night, as the rain returned, I tried to sleep, but the sound of the storm only made everything worse. Every gust of wind made me think of her, out there somewhere, running through the dark with a child in tow. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. I sat up, heart hammering. A message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have called them. No name, no emoji, just that. I typed back, "Mara, where are you? Please, let me help you." No reply. I called Caleb next. He answered on the first ring, voice raw. "She's gone," I said. He went quiet. "What did she take?" "Just her things. But she said Eli was safe, that you'd twist it if she told me where." He groaned softly. "God, she's going to run again. Do you know where she might go?" "Every time it's somewhere connected to us," he said. "Places we lived, places she thinks I can't find her. She's predictable, but she's terrified. That's what makes her dangerous." I didn't want to believe that, but deep down, I knew he was right. Mara's fear was more than paranoia. It was a storm she carried everywhere she went, and if she had that child with her, there was no telling what she might do next. Caleb's voice cracked. "If you hear from her, please tell me. I don't care what it takes. I just want Eli home." After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The rain pounded harder, rattling the windows. I found myself whispering into the empty room, "Where are you, Mara?" Minutes turned into hours. Then, around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Same number. "If you see him, don't believe a word he says." My stomach dropped. She was watching me. Somewhere out there in the dark, she still had eyes on me. And before I could even think about what that meant, a heavy knock echoed through my apartment. 3 sharp raps. I froze. The kind of knock that doesn't come from a stranger. Slowly, I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing there, soaked from the rain, was Caleb. The man everyone warned me about. I expected a violent monster. Instead, I found a man who looked completely broken. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, rainwater dripping from his coat, eyes red-rimmed and hollow, it took everything in me not to slam it shut. For weeks, I'd imagined this man through Mara's stories, a towering figure, with fists like thunder and a temper to match, but the man in front of me didn't look dangerous. He looked tired. He didn't make a move toward me, just held up both hands like a man surrendering. "I'm Caleb Monroe," he said quietly. "Please don't call the cops. I just need to talk." I kept my phone in my hand, thumb resting on the emergency button. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but you're the only one she trusted enough to talk to. Please, I'm begging you. Let me explain." He pulled a folder from inside his coat and held it out toward me. I hesitated before taking it. Inside were the same custody documents he'd texted before, but now I could feel the weight of them, the embossed court seal, the signatures. There was also a restraining order, his photo stapled to it. "She said you forged these," I murmured. His eyes flickered with something like despair. "Of course she did." I exhaled slowly and stepped aside. "You've got 5 minutes." He came in cautiously, dripping onto the entryway rug. I noticed how he glanced around, like every shadow held a memory. "She lived here?" he asked. "For a while?" He nodded, then sat on the edge of my couch, clutching his hands together. When he spoke again, his voice was calm but heavy, like someone who'd told this story too many times. "Mara and I were together for 5 years," he began. "We met in college. She was brilliant, creative, unpredictable. Everyone loved her. But after Eli was born, something changed. She started thinking people were watching us, that our neighbors were spying through the vents. She'd cover the windows with blankets, unplug the phone." I listened silently, every piece falling into place with horrifying precision. He continued, "We tried therapy, medication. It helped for a while. Then one night, she took Eli and vanished. I woke up and they were gone. She drained our accounts, bought fake IDs, and started moving from town to town." "Why would she do that?" I asked softly. He looked up at me, eyes full of grief. "Because she thinks she's protecting him. From me. In her mind, I'm the villain of her story. I'm the abuser. It's easier for her to believe that than to face what's happening inside her own head." I sat across from him, hands clasped tight in my lap. The details matched too perfectly. Her fake ID, the conflicting stories, her obsession with windows and phones. Every inconsistency suddenly made sense. "She told me you tracked her," I said. "I did," he admitted. "I've been following the trail she leaves. Gas stations, motels, people she manipulates into helping her. You're not the first, Jolene, but I hope you'll be the last." His honesty caught me off guard. There was no malice in his tone, no threat, just exhaustion. "Manipulates?" I repeated. "She finds people with kind hearts," he said. "Women, usually. She plays the victim, says she's escaping a monster. You take her in, protect her, feed her. Then when she feels safe, she moves on. Sometimes she takes things with her. Money, sometimes worse." I flinched, remembering how she'd rearranged my things, how she'd studied the locks on my doors. Caleb's voice cracked. "I'm not angry at her anymore. I just want Eli home. He's 4 years old, Jolene. He still sleeps with the same toy car she packed when she left. I don't even think she knows what's real and what isn't anymore." I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. "She had that car," I whispered, "in her bag." He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "She always keeps his things close. It's how she convinces herself she's still a good mother." Silence filled the room. Rain hammered against the window, and I thought about how easily I'd believed her, how quickly I'd chosen compassion over caution. "I almost called the police on you," I admitted. He gave a sad smile. "You wouldn't be the first." I looked down at my phone still in my hand, the emergency number hovering under my thumb. For the first time, I felt no urge to press it. "Do you think she'll reach out to me again?" I asked. "Probably," he said. "She trusts you. She'll think you're still on her side. And if she does—" He hesitated. "Please tell me. Just text me, even if it's one word. I'll handle the rest." I nodded slowly. "If it helps find Eli, I will." He leaned back, running a hand through his soaked hair. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. His words landed heavy. I didn't feel heroic. I felt used, manipulated, like a fool who'd opened her door to a ghost in distress and nearly lost her sanity for it. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Caleb's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced down, and the color drained from his face. I watched his hand tremble as he read the screen. What is it? I asked. He swallowed hard. She just used her credit card. My pulse quickened. Where? He looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. A motel 20 miles north of here. Room booked under a new name. I felt the air go still between us. She's close, he said. She's so close. And in that moment, I understood the look in his eyes when I opened the door. The look of a man who's been chasing ghosts and finally found a heartbeat at the end of the trail. The truth about Eli. The truth wasn't black or white. It was a blur of love, fear, and madness. Caleb sat across from me at my kitchen table, the rain outside thinning to a light drizzle. The folder of documents lay open between us, the pages curling at the corners from moisture. He rubbed his temples with both hands. She took him 2 weeks ago, he said quietly. I came home from work, and his room was empty. No toys, no clothes, nothing. She left a note that said she was saving him. The word stuck in my mind. Saving. As if Eli had been in danger when he'd been tucked safely in his father's care. I thought of that small blue toy car I'd found in her bag. She hadn't stolen it by accident. She'd taken it because it meant something. Proof of possession, a piece of him she couldn't leave behind. Do you think she's still in the area? I asked. Caleb shook his head. She never stays long, but she always circles back to familiar places. She hides where she's been before, where she thinks she can blend in. The motel that just popped up on my tracker fits that pattern. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was the local police detective who had taken my earlier statement. His voice was steady, professional. Ms. Daniels, we traced the text you received from the number identifying as Caleb. I froze. And? It came from a prepaid burner phone purchased in another state. It's untraceable. Could be anyone. I looked at Caleb across the table. His expression didn't change. No guilt, no surprise. It was me, he said, before I even had to ask. I used a burner because she monitors numbers. She knows how to hack into accounts, find devices. I couldn't risk her tracing me to Eli. The detective sighed. Just be careful, ma'am. If she contacts you again, let us know immediately. After the call, the silence between us thickened. I wanted to trust him, but a small, cautious part of me still wondered if I was falling into another story, just like I did with Mara. Can I see a picture of him? I asked. Caleb nodded and slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of a little boy in a red sweater, holding that same blue toy car. His grin was lopsided, mischievous, his eyes bright and full of life. That was taken the week before she took him, Caleb said softly. He was so happy that day. I felt my throat tighten. She said you were dangerous. He met my eyes. If you thought the person you loved was sick, but she didn't believe she was, what would you do? Would you lock her up, or would you try to protect your son first? I didn't have an answer. Later that day, we started searching together. We stopped by shelters, motels, and bus stations, showing Eli's photo, describing Mara. No one had seen them. At one shelter, a woman thought she recognized Mara, but wasn't sure. She was nice, the woman said. A little jumpy. She said she was waiting for someone. Waiting. That word made my stomach twist. Waiting for who? By the time we got back to my apartment that evening, exhaustion pressed down on me like a weight. I was unlocking my mailbox when I saw it. An envelope with no return address, my name written in careful, slanted handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He's safe now. You'll see the truth soon. I stared at it, my hands trembling. Caleb, I whispered. She knows where I live. He read the note, his jaw tightening. She's close. That means Eli's close too. I didn't know whether to feel terrified or relieved. Somewhere in this tangled mess of fear and obsession was a child who didn't understand why his mother and father were playing hide and seek with his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how I'd believed her, how I'd offered her a home, how I'd been part of her escape. The guilt gnawed at me until sunrise. When I met Caleb the next morning, he looked equally wrecked. He had dark circles under his eyes, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. "I've been retracing her path," he said, spreading a map on the dashboard of his truck. "She used her card at gas stations heading north, but she's not consistent. It's like she wants to leave a trail, but not enough of one to catch. We drove for hours, hitting every stop along the highway. A woman at a diner finally gave us our first solid lead. Yeah, I remember her," she said, tapping her notepad thoughtfully. "Came in yesterday with a little boy. He had curly hair and was playing with a toy car. She ordered him pancakes." My breath caught. "That's him," Caleb said immediately, showing her the photo. The waitress nodded. "They sat in the corner booth. She paid cash and left in a hurry when her phone rang. Looked nervous." I could almost see it. Mara glancing over her shoulder, clutching Eli's hand, her mind fracturing under the weight of her own paranoia. "She must have realized someone was close," Caleb muttered. "That's why she left early." We gave the diner's security footage to the police. They promised to review it immediately. Seeing that small boy moving in grainy black and white images hit harder than I expected. He looked so normal, so unaware of the storm around him. Later that afternoon, we got a call from the detective again. His tone was brisk. "We have an update. A motel clerk near Old Mill Road reported that a woman matching Mara's description stayed there last night, with a child." Caleb gripped the steering wheel. "Is she still there?" "She checked out this morning," the detective said. "Left before dawn." I could hear the tension in Caleb's voice when he asked, "Did she say where she was going?" The detective hesitated. "No. But she asked about directions to the old highway, northbound." As the call ended, the air in the truck grew thick with dread. The old highway was remote, nothing but long stretches of forest, and a few rundown cabins from decades past. It was exactly the kind of place Mara would think was safe. "She's running again," Caleb said quietly. "But she's getting desperate. That's when she makes mistakes." I looked out the window as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the horizon in dull orange light. My stomach churned with a strange mix of fear and pity. "Mara loves him," I said softly. "In her mind, she's protecting him. But she's lost. She can't see what she's doing." Caleb didn't respond. He just pressed harder on the gas, the tires hissing against the wet pavement. Somewhere out there, a frightened mother was driving through the dark, clutching her son's hand, believing she was the only one who could save him. And somewhere behind her, the truth was closing in. The cabin in the woods. I didn't know if I was walking into a rescue or a reckoning. By the time Caleb and I reached the dirt road that led to the old cabins, the last of the daylight had bled out of the sky. The forest pressed in on both sides, trees bending toward us like eavesdroppers. The GPS signal had dropped miles back, leaving only the beam of our headlights cutting through the mist. "There," Caleb whispered, pointing ahead. Through the trees, I saw it. A small wooden cabin, its porch light flickering weakly, a single silhouette moving inside. My pulse quickened. "She's here." Caleb's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm going in." I caught his arm before he could open the door. "Wait, if you rush in, you'll scare her. You said it yourself. She's unpredictable when she's cornered. Let me talk to her first. She trusts me." He hesitated, torn between desperation and fear. After a long moment, he nodded. "Be careful. Please." I slipped out of the truck and pulled my jacket tighter against the cold. The night was eerily still except for the hum of crickets and the faint creak of the cabin's porch. Each step I took toward that door felt heavier, like I was walking through someone else's dream. When I reached the porch, I could see movement through the thin curtains. A woman's shadow, rocking slightly, her head bent forward. I took a deep breath and knocked once. "Mara?" My voice sounded small, uncertain. "It's me. It's Jolene." For a moment, nothing. Then, from inside, a muffled gasp. "Go away," she said. "You shouldn't have come." I pressed my hand against the door frame. "I just want to talk. Please, let me help you." The door creaked open an inch, and I saw her eyes through the crack, wild, red, glinting in the half-light. "You brought him, didn't you?" she hissed. "You brought Caleb here." "He's outside," I admitted softly, "but he's not here to hurt you. He just wants to see Eli." Her hand trembled on the doorknob. Then she opened the door wider. The smell of wood smoke and stale air hit me immediately. The cabin was dimly lit by a single lamp sitting on a crate. Blankets were piled in the corner, and on the floor sat a small boy. Eli. He was clutching his blue toy car, humming softly as he rolled it across a piece of wood. He looked unharmed, but his eyes were distant, like he'd learned how to live in silence. "Mara," I said gently, stepping inside. "You've done enough running. No one wants to hurt you." She crouched beside Eli, pulling him close. "He's my baby," she whispered fiercely. "He's all I have." "I know," I said. "You love him, that's clear. But this, hiding, running, it's hurting both of you." Her shoulders shook as she started to cry. "He took everything from me, Jolene. My home, my life, my son. You don't know what it's like to be erased." I took a step closer, careful not to startle her. "Mara, I don't know what happened between you and Caleb, but Eli deserves both his parents. He deserves stability." She laughed bitterly through her tears. "Stability? From a man who locks me up? Who tells the world I'm insane?" "Maybe he made mistakes," I said softly. "But you can't keep living like this. You can't keep Eli hidden from the world." Mara's face twisted, rage breaking through her grief. "He'll twist you too. You'll believe his calm little voice and his fake papers. You'll think I'm the crazy one." Her volume rose with every word, her hands shaking. Eli whimpered and covered his ears. I knelt down slowly, lowering my voice to a whisper. "You're scaring him, Mara. Please, look at him. He needs you calm." For a second, something shifted in her expression. Guilt, maybe. But then headlights flashed through the window. Caleb had gotten out of the truck. Mara's head snapped toward the window, her breath quickening. "No, no, no, no!" She grabbed Eli's arm. "He found me again." I moved closer, trying to block her view of the window. "Listen to me. He's not here to take Eli by force. He just wants to talk." "He'll take him," she said, voice shaking. "He always does, but not this time." Before I could react, she darted into the tiny kitchenette. My heart slammed against my ribs as I saw her hand close around a kitchen knife from the counter. "Mara, stop!" I shouted. She backed toward Eli, pulling him behind her. The blade glinted in the lamplight, trembling in her grip. "Stay away." "Mara, please," I begged, holding up both hands. "No one wants to hurt you. Just put the knife down." The front door burst open behind me. Caleb stood in the doorway, soaked from rain, chest heaving. "Mara, it's me," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, you don't have to do this." "Get out," she screamed. "You don't get to talk to me." Eli began to cry, clutching at her arm. The sound was small and scared, and it cut through the air like glass. "Mara," I whispered, "look at him. He's terrified." Her eyes darted between me and Caleb, wild and unfocused. "He'll never take him again," she said through gritted teeth. "He's mine." Caleb took one cautious step forward. "You're right," he said softly. "He's yours too. But he needs both of us, Mara. He needs you to be okay." She shook her head violently. "You're lying." I took another slow step closer. "You trust me, don't you? You told me I was the only one who believed you. I'm here now. Let's end this." For a heartbeat, I thought she might listen. Her shoulders lowered slightly, her grip on the knife loosened. Then she looked at me, her eyes suddenly narrowing. "You brought him here," she said coldly. "Mara," her voice dropped to a whisper, trembling and dangerous. "You're just like him." And before I could speak again, she raised the knife. The truth no one wanted to face. In the end, no one was a villain, just people destroyed by fear, love, and the lies they told themselves. Time froze the moment Mara raised the knife. Her hand trembled, her eyes glassy and distant. Behind her, Eli whimpered, pressing himself into the corner. Caleb took one step forward, and instinctively, I moved between them. "Mara, stop!" I shouted, my voice breaking. Please, don't do this." For a heartbeat, she looked like she might strike, her knuckles white around the handle. But then, outside, red and blue lights flared through the cabin windows. The distant crunch of tires on gravel grew louder. The police were here. "Don't let them take him," she whispered hoarsely, tears streaming down her face. "He's all I have." I shook my head slowly, holding my hands up. "You can still make this right. Put the knife down, Mara. Please." Her gaze darted to Eli, his small, terrified face. Something shifted inside her then. A flicker of recognition. She looked at the knife as if she didn't understand how it had gotten there, and then, with a broken sob, she let it fall. The blade clattered against the wooden floor. I lunged forward just as the door burst open. 2 officers stormed inside, guns drawn. "Drop your weapon!" one shouted before realizing she already had. "It's okay," I said quickly, spreading my arms in front of her. "She's done. She's not fighting." Mara collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I just wanted him safe," she kept repeating, rocking back and forth. "I just wanted him safe." The officers holstered their weapons and moved carefully toward her, speaking in low, gentle voices. One of them knelt down and helped her to her feet. She didn't resist, didn't look at any of us. She just let herself be led out into the night. Caleb crossed the room to Eli, scooping him into his arms. The boy buried his face in his father's shoulder, crying softly. Caleb's voice broke as he whispered, "It's okay, buddy. I've got you. You're safe now." I stood there, numb, watching them. Relief and heartbreak twisted together inside me until I couldn't tell them apart. When the police car pulled away, the forest seemed to exhale. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind only the chirping of crickets and the smell of rain-soaked earth. Caleb turned to me, tears streaking his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "If you hadn't been here..." He couldn't finish. I nodded, though my chest ached. She never wanted to hurt him, Caleb. She really believed she was saving him. "I know," he said quietly. "That's what makes it so hard." The next few days passed in a blur of statements, interviews, and sleepless nights. The police confirmed that Mara had been staying in abandoned cabins, surviving on what little she could find. Eli was examined by doctors, malnourished but physically unharmed. Mara, meanwhile, was transferred to a psychiatric facility an hour outside town. The doctors said she was suffering from a severe delusional disorder. They planned to keep her under observation indefinitely. I thought that was the end of it, that I could finally breathe again. But peace didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, pleading, desperate, broken. 2 weeks later, I decided to visit her. The facility was clean and quiet, surrounded by high fences and pine trees. A nurse led me down a long hallway that smelled faintly of disinfectant. When we reached Mara's room, she was sitting by the window, staring out at the trees. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes dull and unfocused. She turned when she heard the door open. For a moment, recognition flickered, and then it was gone. "Do I know you?" she asked softly. My heart twisted. "It's Jolene," I said. "You stayed with me for a while." She frowned slightly, searching her memory, then shook her head. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. "You don't have to remember." I set an envelope on the small table beside her bed. Inside was a note I'd written the night before. "I hope one day you find peace, Mara. I hope you can see that no one was your enemy, not even the ones you feared. The truth is still yours to rebuild when you're ready." When I left the room, she was still looking out the window, humming softly. The same lullaby I'd heard her sing to Eli in the cabin. That night, I got a message from Caleb. It was short. "Eli asks about you. He calls you the lady who saved him. Thank you, Jolene, for everything." I sat there staring at the screen, tears slipping down my cheeks. I didn't feel like a hero. If anything, I felt small. A spectator who had stepped into someone else's storm and barely made it out standing. Over the following weeks, I tried to go back to normal life. I worked my shifts, drank coffee with Lydia, even started leaving the windows open again. But the experience had changed me in ways I couldn't fully explain. I learned how easily truth can twist when seen through pain. How love can look like madness, and madness can masquerade as love. How a single act of kindness can open doors you can't close again. Most of all, I learned that compassion without boundaries can be dangerous, that empathy, if you're not careful, can drag you under with the person you're trying to save. I still think about Mara sometimes, where her mind must wander now, whether she remembers Eli's laughter or the feel of his hand in hers. Maybe, in her own fractured way, she still believes she saved him. Maybe that's the only truth she can live with. For me, the line between right and wrong will never be as clear as it once was. Because in the end, none of us were villains. We were just people, broken by fear, blinded by love, trapped inside the lies we told ourselves to survive. I looked out my window one last time that night, the streetlights casting long shadows across the floor. The world felt quieter now, but not safer, just different. And as I turned off the light and let the darkness settle around me, I thought of the first night I met her. The rain, the bruises, the trembling voice that had said, "My ex is dangerous." She wasn't wrong. But she never said that danger was the story she told herself. In the end, I realized not every victim is innocent, and not every monster looks like one. Sometimes danger doesn't come screaming through your door. It walks in quietly, asking for help. Mara didn't just fool me. She fooled herself too, until her lies became her reality. Now I know that compassion needs boundaries, because even kindness can be weaponized. She told me her ex was dangerous, but the real danger was the story she made me believe. If this story made your heart tighten even for a second, don't forget to keep it alive. Share it with someone who still believes every cry for help is honest. Hit the like button if you've ever trusted the wrong person and learned too late what they were capable of. And before you go, tell me in the comments, if a stranger showed up at your door one rainy night, bruised and begging for safety, would you let them in?